Hello,
Um,
everyone. This is Carrie Reynolds, and welcome to SPCE 619, Section 805 debate on a vital topic in the field of applied behavior analysis, the right to exercise personal liberties versus the need for habilitation. As behavior analysts, we are constantly navigating the ethical landscape of honoring individual autonomy while also providing structured support that promotes growth and independence. Today, you'll hear two well-researched perspectives on this topic. One side will argue that personal liberty and autonomy must come first. Client choice, consent, and dignity should guide all behavior analytic practices. The other side will advocate for the importance of habilitation. Skill development is not only ethical, but essential to support meaningful autonomy, safety, and inclusion. We'll cover opening statements, arguments, and rebuttals from both sides, ethical considerations, biases, and how the dimensions of ABA apply to this debate. The end of the debate will consist of closing statements from both sides, and each side will answer a few questions from our guest audience. Let's begin. We will first hear opening statements from both sides, so we're going to start with personal liberties. McKenna Thorpe presenting. Go ahead, McKenna.
In the context of applied behavior analysis, personal liberties refer to an individual's right to autonomy, choice, and freedom from unnecessary restriction or coercion from receiving behavioral services. When habilitative interventions may offer clinical benefits, they risk infringing on personal autonomy and reinforcing medicalized views of neurodivergence. There must be policies and practices that safeguard human dignity, personal autonomy, and equitable access to care, even when pursuing broader social, medical, or scientific goals. All individuals, regardless of age or ability, have the right to personal liberty and autonomy, and behavioral interventions must prioritize consent, assent, choice, and respect for personal dignity over compliance and conformity.
Thank you, McKenna. We'll hear opening statements from habilitation side being presented by Ruth Cates. Please present your side's opening statement, Ruth.
Thank you, Carrie. Habilitation is the process of teaching and learning new skills in order to improve daily living and increase access to the community. It is argued that habilitation is necessary for individuals with autism to assist them with integrating into society. Therapies including occupational therapy, physical therapy, and applied behavior analysis are all examples of habilitative services that work to improve quality of life for a specific population. Today, we'll be discussing habilitation through an applied behavior analysis lens, which, at its core, is the teaching and learning of new skills through the science of behavior. True habilitation comes from providing inclusive services that empower an individual to work towards self determination. Autonomy and choice should be considered throughout the process and facilitate access to least restrictive environments throughout the lifespan. Building fundamental skills such as language, social skills, daily living skills, and pre-academic skills act as a stepping stone towards independence. By providing habilitation, this allows for support when decision-making capacity may be limited.
Thank you, Ruth. We'll now hear personal liberties argument presented by McKenna. You'll have 4 minutes, McKenna. I'm going to start your timer.
Thank you. Personal liberties and self-determination are essential to the field of ABA, and these principles are essential to ethical and effective practice. People have the right to self-determination, even when their choices might not seem perfect to others. In ABA, this means we must respect our clients' autonomy and right to make decisions about their own lives. Our goal isn't to control behavior, but to empower individuals to act freely and meaningfully within their environments. Historically, ABA has sometimes been criticized for trying to make autistic individuals appear indistinguishable from their neurotypical peers. For example, in They Have a Voice, Are We Listening? Venziano and Shea trace historic ABA work where indistinguishability was an explicit goal. They argue this goal is problematic because it tends to prioritize external norms over what the client wants, and that the focus should shift from a neurotypical focus to a more neuroform affirming focus on self-determination, centering the client's own voice and preferences and goals. What goals do they want, and how do they want to grow, rather than having external goals imposed on them? This aligns with the ethical commitment to do no harm and to promote dignity and independence rather than conformity. This principle is also supported internationally. The African Disability Protocol highlights the right to personal liberty by discouraging institutional control and promoting autonomy for people with disabilities. The African Disability Protocol requires states to ensure full participation of persons with disabilities in decision-making. It also mandates that laws and practices that result in institutional control without respect for autonomy must be modified or abolished. Similarly, in the United States, these ideas parallel the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 and the BACB Ethics Code, which emphasize the least restrictive environment and minimizing harm. Ethical ABA practice means we prioritize consent, assent, choice, and respect for personal dignity, not just compliance. Bro and Smith define assent as including nonverbal behaviors or verbal behavior, indicating agreement, and they emphasize that withdrawal of assent must be honored. They also report that continuing education for BCBA significantly increased self-reported dignity, assent practices, and awareness of ableism. In short, progress in ABA must balance freedom and protection, helping individuals grow while safeguarding their rights and autonomy. Finally, research supports that honoring choice not only protects liberty, but also enhances outcomes. For example, May in 2018 found that when students were allowed to choose their activities and receive differential attention, they showed the highest levels of on-task behavior than even more than in the teacher choice condition. This demonstrates that choice itself is a powerful behavioral support, promoting motivation and engagement. In conclusion, when we center self-determination, assent, and respect for personal liberty, we uphold the most ethical and humanistic values of ABA. We move beyond compliance to collaboration, ensuring our clients have both a voice and power in shaping their own lives.
All right, thank you for your argument. We'll now hear a rebuttal from the habilitation side presented by Ruth. Please respond to the opposing viewpoint with a rebuttal to the personal liberties argument. Ruth, go ahead.
It was argued previously that individuals have the right to self-determination and that their choices being potentially imperfect, it is still a fundamental right. While this may be the case, without habilitation, some individuals may not have the ability to access their community, leading to isolation and exclusion. Engaging in unlimited personal liberties may sound ideal, however, this could lead to exercising choices that may be potentially harmful. For example, money management, cooking safely, and navigating the community. Informed decision-making can be a way to help support individuals in making choices that are in their best interest and they are in need of support. Manuela et al. Utilizes the global assessment of functioning as a way to measure these skills. Assessment of this kind can be helpful in targeting specific skills that help to build self-determination and independence. Self-determination can be directly linked to skills taught through habilitation, making it necessary in order to achieve this skill. It was also stated that practices should be focused on consent, assent, choice, and respect for personal dignity rather than emphasizing compliance and conformity. Many interventions are rooted in compliance-based therapies, and in the history of ABA, there has been a strong emphasis on teaching individuals to conform to society by suppressing traits that may lead them to present as different than others. There are, however, many different intervention and habilitation techniques that can help build skills in ways that honor preferences while making this process enjoyable. Wang and colleagues conducted a systematic review on interventions that utilize gamification as a means to present certain skills and include preferences. This is just one of many ways that professionals can integrate choices and preferences into the habilitation process. Throughout any intervention, assent can be constantly monitored with a specific protocol unique to each client, and assent withdrawal can be honored in safe ways. Lastly, the opposing side emphasizes the importance of balancing freedom and protection within progress. Similarly to the point above, the history of ABA has been consistent with these principles. However, there has been a shift to acknowledging and understanding the previous shortcomings of the field and work to address those shortcomings. The 1990 Bannerman article goes in depth into the importance of habilitation while respecting the right to personal liberties. It's acknowledged that at the time of the article, habilitation was fundamentally compromising to an individual's right to choose, mainly because it was widely believed that they would make the wrong decision. It was proposed in the article that it is important to provide the individual with that autonomy and freedom as much as possible, while also acknowledging the importance of habilitation. It is also emphasized that without the skills taught through habilitation, the ability to gain and advocate for freedom and protection may not be possible. Today, interventionists are educated on the importance of including the client and stakeholders in the process of planning and implementation.
All right, thank you. Now we'll hear from Chris Arroyo Smits presenting the habilitation argument. You have 4 minutes. I will start your timer now.
When we talk about habilitation, we're really talking about building ability, not restricting it. Interventions such as communication training, social skills development, or structured supports allow individuals to participate in the least restrictive environments possible. For example, Emanuela and colleagues 2025 found that targeted interventions improve global functioning across communication, employment, and social participation, all key areas that directly affect quality of life and independence. Similarly, Wang et al. 2025 studied gamified interventions for young adults with autism and how they improved social interaction and communication while also honoring client preferences and engagement. That's habilitation in action, empowering growth and inclusion through approaches that are effective and personally meaningful. So rather than limiting freedom, habilitation creates conditions for freedom by helping people gain the tools to thrive in their communities. Another important point is that not everyone always has the capacity to fully informed decision making. Cognitive or developmental disabilities can make it difficult for some individuals to understand the long-term consequences of their choices. This isn't about taking anyone's rights away. It's about protecting and supporting people until they developed the skills and judgment needed to exercise those rights safely. Bannerman et al. 1990 illustrates this tension well. They describe examples such as whether a person with developmental disabilities should be free to eat unlimited donuts or take naps all day. While total freedom might sound ideal, without some structure, those choices could actually reduce long-term quality of life. The point isn't control, it's teaching healthier decision making so the individual gains real independence. That's the core of habilitation, balancing respect for autonomy with the responsibility to ensure people can make choices that truly benefit them in the long run. The last point is about empowerment, and this is where habilitation and personal liberty actually meet in the middle. Hormenford 2023 argues that rights alone, like the right to make choices or live independently, are not enough to ensure inclusion. People also need the supports and structures that make those rights meaningful in everyday life. When someone is given freedom without the skills, resources, or community support to manage it, they might technically be free, but they're not truly empowered. Habilitation bridges that gap by developing communication, self-advocacy, and daily living skills, the foundation that turns right into real-world independence. So habilitation isn't about limiting the choices, it's about making the choices possible. To wrap up, our team believes that habilitation doesn't oppose personal liberty, it strengthens it. By implementing structured environments, supporting informed decision making, and focusing on long-term empowerment, we create a path where individuals can thrive in least restrictive, most self-determined environments possible. As Bannerman et al. 1990 pointed out, sometimes short-term limits are necessary to achieve long-term freedoms, and habilitation is the bridge that makes that freedom sustainable.
All right, thank you, Chris. We'll now hear Alexis Robinson with the rebuttal for the habilitation argument. Go ahead, Alexis.
Hey, thank you, Carrie. So while the need for rehabilitation is often framed as beneficial, it is imperative to investigate whose values guide that practice. ABA has a history of being guided by the values of the practitioners rather than the individuals. Medical paternalism, the practice of attitude that individuals or organizations should make decisions on behalf of others, purportedly for their best interest, can occur when professionals impose their values, overriding the autonomy and self-determination of the individual. Wilkenfeld and McCarthy, 2020. By prioritizing habilitation without adequate safeguards, we open the door to well-intentioned but ultimately harmful interventions. Upholding the right to personal liberties ensures that individuals, regardless of ability, retain the agency to define their own goals, values, and boundaries. While habilitation focuses on teaching individuals skills that promote independence and societal participation, it often risks infringing upon personal liberties by prioritizing what others deem as appropriate or acceptable behavior. True independence can't exist without freedom to make choices, even imperfect ones. Habilitation programs can unintentionally impose external standards of normalcy that limit autonomy rather than empower it. Lastly, ethical practice and behavior analysis emphasizes sociability, Wolf 1978, meaning that outcomes and methods must be meaningful and acceptable to the individual receiving the services. Upholding personal liberties guarantees that interventions respect cultural and personal differences.
All right, thank you, Alexis. Let's take a step back and explore how ethics and personal biases influence the debate. According to the BACB Ethics Code, behavior analysts have a duty to prioritize client dignity, evidence-based practice, and cultural responsiveness. Let's break down some of the key ethical codes that guide our work and how they connect to habilitation versus personal liberties. Code 301, responsibility to clients. Behavior analysts must always act in the best interests of their clients, selecting goals and interventions that genuinely benefit the individual. Habilitation is all about supporting meaningful skills and honoring clients' preferences, including their right to assent or refuse. Code 108, non-discrimination. Behavior analysts do not discriminate against others. They behave towards others in an equitable and inclusive manner, regardless of age, disability, ethnicity, gender expression identity, immigration status, marital relationship status, national origin, race, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, or any other bias prescribed by law. Code 111, multiple relationships and conflicts of interest. Balancing professional judgment with client preferences is key. It's essential to keep boundaries clear to avoid ethical conflicts and maintain trust in the intervention process. Behavior analysts must communicate the risks of multiple relationships to relevant individuals and continually monitor for the development of multiple relationships. Code 203, maintaining confidentiality. Protecting client privacy isn't just a legal requirement, it's also about dignity. Respecting a client's right to privacy and choice is foundational to ethical practice. Behavior analysts must protect the confidentiality of clients, stakeholders, supervisees, trainees, and research participants. Code 201, treatment efficacy. Our services must be evidence-based but also socially valid. That includes using proven strategies and interventions, but only for behaviors that are socially relevant and are important to a client's quality of life. We should select treatments based on behavioral principles, scientific evidence, and designed to maximize desired outcomes for and protect all clients, stakeholders, supervisees, trainees, and research participants from harm. Code 211, informed consent. Clients must be fully informed and give voluntary agreement to services. We must explain interventions in a way clients and their families understand. They have a right to ask questions, say no, or change their mind, and we must respect that. As practitioners, we have an ethical responsibility to respect dignity, avoid bias, use evidence, and always put the client first. Code 209, involving clients and stakeholders. Behavior analysts must involve clients and relevant stakeholders throughout the service relationship, including when selecting goals, designing assessments and behavior change interventions, and monitoring progress continuously. The last code is 312, advocating for appropriate services. Behavior analysts promote and inform clients and stakeholders about evidence-based assessments and interventions, as well as the necessary level of behavioral services to achieve client goals. We also acknowledge personal biases within the field. We will touch on a few of these next. Even with the best intentions, behavior analysts can have their own assumptions or biases. I will highlight a few common biases and how they can directly impact habilitation and personal liberties. Favoring compliance or normative behavior. Many of us, whether we realize it or not, have been conditioned by society to favor compliance, such as good behavior or fitting in. This bias might push practitioners to prioritize societal norms over what's functional or meaningful for the client. Valuing independence over interdependence. There's a strong cultural preference in many Western settings for independence, but it is not a universal standpoint. For example, in some cultures, interdependence, such as relying on family, friends, or community, is deeply valued. If we only set habilitation goals around self-support, we risk imposing our own cultural norms and missing what truly matters to the client. Letting personal values drive decisions. Some practitioners might expect unrealistic mastery, while others might be overly protective and avoid natural environments altogether. Both sides can limit a client's ability to generalize skills and live with more autonomy. Assuming all intervention is unjust. In attempting to avoid being too controlling or intrusive, some practitioners hesitate to teach important skills. Not every intervention is unjust, but many are empowering when done ethically and respectfully. Overcorrecting for past harms. Some professionals may hold back from suggesting goals, especially those related to behavior or structure. But our job is still to guide, and by avoiding goals altogether might deprive them of useful life-enhancing skills. Rejecting habilitation goals. Some practitioners may reject goals like turn-taking, waiting, or following routines, viewing them as neurotypical standards or ableist. But these are often quality of life skills and things that help individuals navigate their day, communicate, and connect with others. The last bias we recognize is these biases are recognizing biases isn't about shaming others or yourself. It's about growth, and when we're aware of our own biases, we better able to center the client's values, needs, and culture. It's essential to align our work with these core dimensions of applied behavior analysis. By doing this, we ethically and effectively engage in supporting individuals in gaining meaningful personal freedom and improving quality of life. Each dimension offers a unique lens for ensuring that interventions are not only evidence-based, but also person-centered, respectful, and empowering. The applied dimension focuses on behaviors that enhance meaningful personal freedom and quality of life. Behavioral dimension targets clear, observable behaviors that reflect personal autonomy and habilitative progress. The analytic dimension uses data to ensure interventions are helping individuals gain control over their lives. Technological dimension uses clearly defined intervention steps to ensure respect for autonomy and transparency. The dimension of conceptually systematic uses grounded decisions in behavioral science to ethically support choice and habilitation. The effective dimension ensures interventions produce socially significant improvements without unnecessary restrictions. The dimension of generality promotes skills that clients can use across environments to maintain personal freedom and independence. Let's hear each team's closing statements. Speaking for habilitation side, Chris, you may go first.
In closing, our team believes that habilitation and personal liberty aren't opposing forces. They work hand in hand. True freedom isn't just the ability to make choices, it's having the knowledge, skills, and supports to make those choices meaningfully and safely. Although personal liberties can be beneficial and may seem like the best option, we've seen today that habilitation offers lasting benefits, especially those through its focus on building lifelong skills, promoting self-determination, and supporting community inclusion. Habilitation provides the foundation needed to empower individuals, helping them live more independently, access their communities, and express their preferences, not through control and conformity, but through education, structure, and opportunity. As Bannerman et al. 1990 highlighted, sometimes short-term guidance is what allows for long-term autonomy, and as Parmenter 2023 pointed out, rights alone don't guarantee inclusion. Habilitation makes those rights real by giving people the tools to use them. So when we talk about the need for habilitation, we're not talking about limiting freedom, we're talking about building it. Because the goal isn't to decide for someone, it's to stand beside them, equipping them with everything they need to thrive as their most capable, independent self. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. Alexis, please share your closing thoughts on the side of personal liberties.
In essence, personal liberty and self-determination are not just ethical ideas. They are the foundation of compassionate and effective applied behavior analysis. When we honor our clients' right to make choices, express assent or dissent, and define their own goals, we uphold the dignity and autonomy that every individual deserves. By shifting from a model of conformity toward one of the collaboration and empowerment, ABA can move beyond its historical focus on normalizing to a more humanistic and neuro-affirming practice. This alignment with both international human rights frameworks and the BACB ethics code ensures that our work not only changes behavior, but also strengthens freedom, voice, and meaningful participation in life. Personal liberty in this context extends beyond mere independence. It encompasses the individual's right to live according to their values, culture, and identity without coercion or suppression. Upholding these Upholding these liberties requires practitioners to approach every intervention with humility, cultural sensitivity, and respect for the client's lived experience. Ultimately, ethical ABA is about partnerships, supporting individuals, and living authentically, safely, and with full self determination. When we embed personal liberty into every aspect of our practice, we reaffirm our commitment to fostering environments where clients can thrive, not because they have been shaped to fit societal norms, but because they are empowered to express who they truly are.
All right, thank you, Alexis. We'll now take a few questions from the audience. Please keep your answers concise but thorough. For the habilitation side, we will hear from Ruth and Chris. Ruth, how can habilitative interventions be designed to promote independence and long-term self-determination rather than restrict personal choice?
When designing interventions, the first thing that should be considered is what assent looks like for that client so that it can be monitored throughout the intervention process. Skills that are taught to an individual should encourage self-advocacy and personal preferences should be used throughout. When making modifications and creating new interventions, the client should be involved in this process and able to make decisions about their care. All skills taught should be implemented with the concept of long-term independence and behavioral cusps in mind.
Okay. In situations where an individual's decision-making is impaired, how do we ethically determine what supports are appropriate, Ruth?
Utilizing supported decision-making is vital when an individual's decision-making ability is impaired. Supported decision-making involves utilizing family, caregivers, and other individuals who are familiar with the client to help with the decision-making process since they know the individual personally and can relay their preferences and help to advocate. The legally appointed representatives can also be utilized to assist with this process under particular circumstances when legal aspects of the decision-making process are relevant.
All right, thank you. We're going to turn to Chris now. Chris, what safeguards exist to ensure that habilitation services are truly inclusive, empowering, and not focused on forcing conformity or suppressing individuality? Go ahead, Chris.
That's a great question because habilitation should never be about making someone fit into a mold. It's about helping them thrive as themselves. There are several safeguards that help ensure habilitation stays inclusive and empowering. First, interventions are guided by individualized assessments and person-centered planning, meaning goals are created with and specifically for that person. This ensures that their interests, preferences, and culture are a part of every decision. Second, ethical guidelines from the Behavior Analyst Certification Board, BACB, require practitioners to respect client dignity, diversity, and autonomy. We're expected to use the least restrictive methods possible and always prioritize the client's quality of life. Finally, inclusive habilitation emphasizes choice and self-advocacy training, teaching individuals to express what they want and need. So instead of conformity, habilitation becomes about building the skills and confidence for the people to live authentically and independently on their own terms.
Okay, thank you, Chris. How do behavior analysts ensure that autonomy is preserved within habilitative programs when working with individuals who cannot provide full informed consent?
When someone can't fully give informed consent, behavior analysts still have an ethical duty to protect autonomy to the greatest extent possible. That starts with assent-based practices. Even if a person can't legally consent, we still seek their assent or willingness to participate. If someone shows discomfort or resistance, that's communication and it has to be respected. We also involve guardians, families, and interdisciplinary teams to make decisions that align with the person's best interests while honoring their known preferences and values. Additionally, habilitation focuses on building decision-making capacity, teaching communication, choice-making, and self-advocacy skills so the individual can participate more actively in future decisions. So even in cases where full consent is impossible, autonomy isn't lost. It's supported and strengthened through ethical, person-centered practice.
All right, thank you. We will hear from Alexis and McKenna for the personal liberty side. Alexis, how do behavior analysts ensure that a person's right to make their own choice is respected?
By obtaining informed consent and assent, offering meaningful choices throughout assessment and intervention, by prioritizing their values and goals and making sure all information is explained in an understanding way and respecting their choice to refuse.
Okay. How does informed consent and assent look like in practice for individuals with limited communication or cognitive abilities?
Informed consent and assent for individuals with limited communication or cognitive abilities involves using plain language and visual aids to explain purpose, risks, benefits, and alternatives. Also, always check to make sure they understand and still give their consent and assent. Assent can be given through observable agreements or preferences like head nods, AAC devices, interpreters, or support person. Also, making sure dissent is respected is a great way to understand what consent and assent looks like.
All right, thank you. Move over to McKenna. When, if ever, is it ethically acceptable to limit a person's choices in the name of safety or skill development?
It may be ethically acceptable and even necessary to limit a person's choices under specific circumstances, such as if the individual or others are in immediate danger or when it's part of a socially valid, thoughtfully designed intervention. In these cases, it's important to ensure that the interventions are evidence-based, individualized, and focused on long-term benefit to the individual. It is never ethical to limit choices for convenience to staff without a plan to fade the intervention as a form of punishment to control the individual or to ignore the preferences or rights of the individual.
All right, thank you. How can behavior analysts balance teaching important life skills without pressuring clients to conform to societal norms that may not reflect their personal values or culture?
Treatment goals should always be centered around the client, their culture, and their personal values. It's essential for behavior analysts to take the time and effort to learn these things about their client and their client's family, practicing cultural humility and responsiveness. Before implementing an intervention, behavior analysts should be sure that they have received consent to do so. The goal should not be to normalize the client or to teach them to conform, but rather to empower the client and teach them skills that will help them live more independently, as well as add to their quality of life.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us for this debate. We hope you leave with a deeper appreciation for the balance between personal liberties and habilitation. This is the kind of tension that calls us to be reflective, compassionate, and rigorous in our work as behavior analysts. Good job, both teams.